Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Relationship Arena, and welcome back to another episode of A Closer Look, where I take some topics that come up in sessions with my couples and my clients, and we dive into them in terms of what happens in relationships. And today's episode is called The Conflict Recipe. So this is what I call the mixture of stuff that happens that creates conflict. Now, conflict can be a natural part of relationships, and I've spoken about this before when we looked at, do you want to win it or do you want to resolve it? You know, conflict happens because needs and wants aren't met. Can you hear those noisy ducks outside? They're so noisy today, but we're just going to plow through anyway. So you'd think that was easy then. Needs and wants aren't met. So if we communicate our needs and our wants, then our partner understands that. Then why is there need for conflict? And of course, conflict can be loud and shouty. Conflict can be just ignoring each other. Conflict can be passive aggressive. Conflict can be nitpicking at each other. Conflict can be about one specific thing. It can be about life in general, or it can become about every time they breathe, I feel like I'm in conflict. But it's about these wants and needs. So why is that not easy? Well, because we're humans, and because we all have our own way of looking at what we need from a relationship, and we make expectations and we make assumptions. And when we do that, we assume that our partner knows what's going on. We assume that we know that they understand what we need or how we're feeling. You know, my classic statement for that is, well, she knows that I love them, don't they? Do they? They don't seem to, but you've made an assumption that they do. And if you look at an earlier episode where we looked at love languages, we can see sometimes why these discrepancies occur. But my recipe for conflict, the conflict recipe, is you take a big dose of expectations, two big cupfuls of assumptions, you add in wants and needs, and suddenly the person does not feel heard, they do not feel seen, and this cake mixture, this conflict cake, is rising and rising until it's ready to explode like an overdone souffle. So the thing is about expectations is they're really easy to make. I call this menu and meal. You have your menu, you order your food, you kind of expect it to be as it said it is, but you don't know exactly, do you? But you're thinking about it all the time and you're waiting for it and you're building up your hopes. And the meal turns out, and the meal's fine. It's exactly what it said it was in most cases, but maybe it's just not quite how you wanted it. Maybe you wanted the sauce on the side, or maybe you wanted the chips crispy, so now you're disappointed. But that disappointment isn't the meal's fault. The meal is the meal. It never promised to be anything else. This is disappointment that you've brought on yourself, to be honest. Now, of course, we're not meals. It's not as easy as that. But it is really important to think about, is what you're trying to order and is what being offered exactly what's being advertised? Are you making assumptions? We objectify people based on the titles they have and the roles they have. You have a view perhaps of how you expect your partner to be. Maybe that's based on your upbringing. Maybe it's based on roles that the people who looked after you did. Maybe that was your home life. If you don't communicate this on a regular basis, they're not going to know because they've got a completely opposite view. Maybe in their home life, it was okay to shout at each other. Maybe they used language that you don't think is appropriate. Maybe one person did all the chores. Maybe that isn't how it was. So it's really important to think about what you're putting into your conflict recipe and to think that you shouldn't make assumptions about communication. This is where I always encourage my couples to have regular check-ins. This is the phrase that's key. Not how was your day? How are you feeling? They go, fine, okay. You say, what happened for you today? What happened for you today? What's going on for you today? You are opening the door to encourage them. Now, of course, not everybody will. Not everyone will step through that door, and there's deeper stuff going on. but you got to think about what expectations and assumptions are you baking in to your recipe. That's the conflict recipe. Are you baking a great big cake that's rising high and ready to explode because you're making expectations and assumptions that your partner should know how you're feeling or know what you want, and vice versa, and it just isn't happening? Conflict recipe, something to think about. I love that the ducks joined in through the whole time I was talking, and now we've come to the end. They're quiet, but I'd love your comments on this. I'd love your thoughts on this, so do feel free to get involved. And if there's a topic that you'd like me to cover in a closer look, or perhaps you have a great story about relationships that you want to tell or information you want to share, then why not get in touch? Please do the usual, like and subscribe. We're a lovely small but growing audience here in the relationship arena. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.